Kirsten, are we actually becoming less fertile as a species?
So the thing is that we have we live in a time when we should be getting healthier and healthier. But I think that there is a tremendous amount of misinformation about what it means to be healthy, both for men and women. If we look on Instagram or Facebook and social media, you see people like doing CrossFit, over exercising, eating a lot of processed food, even if those look like healthy, like collagen. And, instead of collagen, I'd say drink bone broth. Like, how can we get back to the original source? But the other factor, so I feel like people are exhausted and they're getting more exhausted. Like the hustle culture is just continuing to put a lot of pressure on people to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go to the gym and, work till 10 o'clock at night, have a drink and then fall asleep and do it all over again. The second thing is our environment. Um, our environment is really hurting our fertility. In fact, male factor stuff related to sperm has like the quality of men's sperm, I was trying to just think how to language it, has decreased by about 50% in 20 years. So when I was first in practice around in 2000, male factor infertility accounted for about 25% of infertility. So 75% was related to the female. Well, it's more like 50 and 20, and then we had some unknown. And now it's a solid 50%. And what we know is like EMFs are very bad for testicles and sperm. So cell phones in your pocket, even skinny jeans. But more importantly, BPAs, phthalates, things that are made from plastic, even takeout food. If you get a quarter pounder or a hamburger out and it's in that plastic wrap is actually coated in chemicals that are heat activated. And once heat activated, they can actually cross the barrier. The testicles have like a little wrapper around it, a barrier that's similar to sort of the blood-brain barrier to really insulate them and protect them. But those plastics can actually permeate through that barrier and enter the DNA of the sperm, which impacts not only the man's fertility, but the son's, the offspring, if it's a male's fertility, and a little bit the female's. So we always want to look at whatever is changing. There's never one reason. There just isn't ever a reason. That's very short-sighted. It is a very Western way to try to diagnose and like, what is the thing and how do we cut it out or treat it with a pharmaceutical? But we're really missing the opportunity to look at whatever problems we're trying to solve more globally and systematically to see like, what does the environment look like in which this is possible?
So, how does it? I want to know more about this. Well, brain blood barrier, but for the testicles. How does it work and how does it actually penetrate the sperm? Like, this is crazy to me. I know the brain blood barrier. Well, I've heard of it and I know a little bit about it, but tell me please about this.
I'm not a physiologist, so I'm probably the wrong person to explain exactly what I would guess. I would hypothesize is that what's happening is in that barrier, it has a certain amount of permeability, meaning certain size and type molecules can pass through and certain cannot. And that creates this protective membrane, but that those microplastics are likely small enough to penetrate through. If you think about it like fiber, the tighter the fiber, the better filter it is. And the blood-brain barrier, well, I don't even know what it's called off the top of my head. They will call it the testicle barrier.
I'm
Um,
happy with
you
that
know,
name. I like it.
okay, good. Shakespeare invented 30,000 words. So anytime we invent a word, we should just chalk it up to our, immense intelligence.
Win. so
One for
how do,
Kirsten.
so how does it impact the sperm though? So because I'm imagining, okay, it now crossing the testicles, and there, what is it doing that it is actually hurting the sperm? Because like sperm is produced every day, right?
It takes about 120 days, but you're ongoingly producing new sperm. What's happening, and again, I'm not a physiologist, but what's happening is that we know from the field of epigenetics. Epigenetics is how we look at the impact of all the things we're going to talk about today: diet, lifestyle, behavioral health, and environment. How do they affect the turning on and turning off of genes?
Mm.
And so what's happening is in different genes and genotypes, we'll see different mechanisms that turning those on and turning them off. Sometimes they change the environment by making it too alkaline or too acidic. Sometimes they change the temperature. Sometimes they change the environment, like the cellular fluid around it, which makes it impossible to mature or encourages its growth. So it's able to because the sperm is a, very small, molecule, it can enter that and affect the DNA, and I can't give you a more technical answer for
That's
that,
technical
Good
enough.
enough.
unfortunately.
Good enough for me, Kirsten. How do you even get into the space, right? Could you seem so like energetic about this topic, which I really, really love, and I would love to know how do you get even started?
It is a very long story, but I will try to be as concise as possible, but it is not one of my strong points. So, I was 20 years old. I had been a competitive gymnast and tennis player my whole life, trained like hours and 8, 10 hours a day till I threw up every day. And then I was playing tennis when I was, I don't know, 18 or 19. I'm not that good with the past. And tried to serve and I threw my tennis racket. And in Texas, a tennis court in the summer can be 120 degrees, plus the court can be 140 degrees. So there's a lot of sweat that happens. So you can like wipe off my hand and go ahead and serve again. I threw it same again. And I did it again, third time. And I was like, something's wrong. And it really freaked me out. I didn't even say to myself something's wrong, but I just remember going, something's not good. I threw my tennis racket in my trunk and I didn't play tennis for about 3 months after that. And I was playing like 6 hours a day. So that was where I was sort of like subconscious, like, don't touch this. But it got worse. My foot started getting really weak, started dropping. And turns out I had MS. And all the medications they were using for MS at that time were brand new. And I was not into anything outside of straight, nothing alternative at the time. And I was a linguist. That was my early career. I had a job in Korea that I was going to go teach at a Korean university there. And so, but I was getting weaker and weaker. And I thought, I didn't know how completely safe Korea is. Thought, I'm disabled. I use a cane. I should probably like learn some martial arts so I can defend myself. And so then I found the Korean Special Forces training. Don't laugh. So here I am with my cane, but in the Korean Special Forces training, it uses a lot of weapons, which was really fun. Nunchucks, stars,
Oh,
canes,
Ninjas. Perfect.
ninjas. Yeah. And so I was like, well, this is good. I can kind of learn how to weaponize my disability. If I have a cane, I can kung fu. And somebody in my class, I'm getting to the story actually. Somebody in my class said, she saw me like I would go to, Korean Special Forces training walking on a cane and I would just try to adapt, and she said, I really think you should go see my teacher. He's a Chinese medicine doctor. And I was like, "Psh, that's shit. That's like going to a psychic. That's not going to do anything." And she's like, what an ass you are. What an arrogant ass you are. You don't even know anything about it. You're getting worse by the day, even though you're trying to out train it. That's not working. What if there was a 5% chance that this person could help you? And she's like, I'll even pay for your first visit. And I was like, "Oh, okay, you shamed me." I grew up as a Catholic, so I'm sensitive to that. So so I was like, I go and I hide my cane. I don't put any good information in the chart because I literally is like thinking like this is like going to a psychic. Little did I know there are some real psychics out there. So he comes in, this very 5'2" Chinese man, and so gentle, and he just starts feeling my pulse. This is how we feel pulses. And I'm rolling my eyes. I was such a dick. And he says, "Oh, he's so tired." And I was like, whatever, everybody's tired. And I just blow him off. And I was like a 1 out of 10, like as tired as a person could be, even though I still kept training despite that. And then he keeps feeling, he's like, "You have muscle weakness?" No, he says, "You cannot digest food." And then I said, well, okay, that's actually true. I have a lot of digestive symptoms. He's unfazed. And I'm still like, this guy's still a scam. Then a few more minutes, he goes, "Do you have muscle weakness?" And I said, "Actually, I have MS." And he freaks out. He starts clapping. He's like, makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. I was like, am I getting punked here? Like,
Like,
what's
what a
even
dick.
happening? Like, really, I'm like, I'm on a reality show. I watch a lot of TV. And I said, so what's all the celebration about? 20 years old. I'm not that excited about using a cane. He goes, "No, this makes perfect sense." This person became my teacher. So my impersonating him, please don't take it as being disrespectful. I love him. He said, when you were born, and this is, if you don't listen to any other part of, I mean, don't hang up after this, but this is the most, if you hear this, this can change your life because it changed my life. He said, when you were born, your body was very robust. Think constitution, not like weightlifting, not like Instagram, but the functionality of the organs and systems was very high. And your disease, people think you're born with MS, was very weak because you were very robust. But then you were a competitive athlete and you trained and trained and trained. You trained until you threw up every single day. So I don't sweat. So I just would throw up when I get overheated, which was every day. And he said, and probably around 16 or 17, your disease got stronger than you. But you didn't pay attention. You're like, I'll just train harder, right? My arms are weak. I should do more push ups, right? My legs are weak. I should do more squats, heavier weight. I can just out train it. And he said, until some point, there was no return. The ability to take food and break it down and turn it into energy became obliterated because I was having like watery, poo
Yeah.
every day. And he said, so there's no energy. You can't make energy if you can't break your food down and digest it, which means there's no resources for training, and your body is literally shutting down. Your body is saying, if you won't stop, we're going to make your legs not work anymore. And we're going to make you rest. And he said, so what our goal is to identify all of the subclinical factors that are impacting that and restore them as a system. And hopefully you'll either get better or go under remission. And that was 36 years ago.
Wow. And it's been an admission?
So yeah, it's been so I was mostly in remission until sort of menopause. And then I just had some new challenges, and then I just did the same thing again. So how did I get here? Like the day of that appointment, Lucas, I said, I'm an acupuncturist.
This
I
explain
was like,
everything. That is awesome. Great story, by the way. I love it. So no, for me, that's just like mind blowing. So what were the first steps actually? So he said you need to rest, but you can't digest food. So what actually were the first steps that he taught you, and when did he say the first results?
mhm. So like we talked about sort of in the pre-show, we always think like, oh, you're exhausted, do something. You have vitamin D deficiency, take vitamin D. So I want to encourage everybody to just push back a little bit from that. So it's like, so when someone tells you you're tired, what your doctor should be saying is like, I wonder why you're so tired, right? What's your diet like? Right? Because we all know sometimes our diet is very good and sometimes it's just not, and sometimes it's absolutely horrible. We can go, and some people do better staying over here and some people stay over here. But if your diet isn't good, you're not going to have good energy unless you're 17, whatever, but you're an adult. But then even if your diet is perfect, you have a chef who goes to the farmer's market every morning, cooks for the season, for the day, for the climate, all of that. But then if you get gas, bloating, fatigue after meals, sugar cravings, that's a signal. Doesn't necessarily mean you have a disease. You got to rush to the doctor. It's a signal that that process is not optimal. So you're feeding yourself perfectly. Now we have to, well, why? That could be because you have like some gut dysbiosis. You could have leaky gut. All of this you can just test very easily with stuff you don't need to pay for. It could be that you're eating too fast. It could be that you're drinking too much water. Some people who, like, I'm a low producer of hydrochloric acid. I don't really drink anything when I eat because I don't want to dilute the hydrochloric acid already more than it's diluted.
How do you know
If you
that?
don't chew enough.
How do you know that you
Yeah.
don't produce enough acid? Because that would be like really cool tests to know for our audience as well. Because, for example, Mark and I
Yes.
probably drink way too much because we drink between 5 and 6 liters a day. So 1.5 gallons
A
at
lot.
least. So a lot.
A lot is okay, just not with meals, especially if you're a low producer. So the easiest test, this is so easy. All you do, it sounds kind of gross, but it's not. Take a half a teaspoon of baking soda, not baking powder, baking soda, kind of in the orange box, and put it in a little 2 ounces, doesn't matter the amount of water, and shoot it. Then set a timer for 3 minutes and see how fast you burp. The harder you burp and the faster you burp, the higher hydrochloric acid you're producing. Me, I never burp. I don't even burp. So it's like, maybe like 4 or 5 minutes later, the weakest thing that sounds like a hiccup, you know? So what that tells you is that that means that if I don't supplement with hydrochloric acid, then I'm not getting the most out of the food that I'm eating.
Because why does that make a difference if you burp or not? And how does it impact how you get the nutrients out of the food?
So we have to break the food. Like if say you eat an apple and you chew it up, and then in the stomach, it's in like little bits and bobs, right? But it's not down to the molecular level. But the intestines are like a net. And again, like we talk about those little permeability, there's tiny little holes in which the molecule of the broken down apple can penetrate through that wall of the intestine, enter the bloodstream to be used as glucose for fuel. And so if there's not, the hydrochloric acid is the thing first, chewing plus saliva, that's the first mechanism that we use to break our food down. So that's why chewing is a lot more important than we think. Like they say in Chinese medicine, eat your water and chew and drink your food. So I'm just chewing till it really becomes liquefied. But what happens is then that hydrochloric acid, just like, if you remember when you like put a penny in a Coke and it would like just all break down, that's what the hydrochloric acid supports, especially in harder to digest things like fat and protein.
Oh.
For me, it was very interesting because I've always gravitated. I live in Texas. I like barbecue, but I don't really gravitate that much towards meat. And I was like, of course I don't. I can't digest it. I just don't have the, enough hydrochloric without support to digest it well. So I get really sluggish, and then that food wants to ferment. That produces gas and bloating and more, exciting things to talk about on the show.
Do you think that's unconscious that you're just like that's why because your body knows it doesn't have enough acid, that's why you're trained not to eat that much like meat? Also, is there a tendency that women might not have enough have and the same amount as men do? Because like I don't know, I just from my observation, I feel like that men eat way more meat than women do, or is that more like cultural?
I haven't looked at the data. That's a great, great question. You guys are curious. That I like these questions. I don't know if there's different. I'm going to do some research and I'll email you if I find anything relative.
Please
You
do.
can put it in the show notes for later. I don't know if there's actually a difference in like the expectation or the normal amount of HCl that versus men versus women. Living in Texas, people eat barbecue all day, every single day. So here see people eating meat, a lot of meat, especially barbecue.
Oof.
So I'm not sure. In fact, when I was in Hawaii, there's a famous barbecue place here in Austin called Terry Black's. And when I was staying at this person's house when I was in Hawaii last week, she had a bottle of Terry Black's barbecue sauce in her refrigerator. And I said, "How in the hell did you get that?" And she goes, "We went there. We were in Austin for one day. It's the only barbecue place we went. We had to buy some barbecue sauce because it was so good." So, anyways,
Oh,
that's a side
that's
note.
amazing. Now I want to eat barbecue.
Come to Texas. I'll come and hang out with you guys in Barcelona. I'll host you in Austin.
Oh, please
Let's do
do.
it.
Please do. All right. So we already know now your background. You have your master. He teaches you all this stuff. And how do you get then to where you're at now at Conceivable?
So when I was in acupuncture college, the first year of acupuncture school, one of the things you have to learn, it's all memorization mostly, is the associations. Like a symptom, a time, a color. There are thousands of associations. So somebody else says, "Oh, I get a eye twitch at 3 o'clock in the afternoon." You're like, "Oh, that's like liver blood, and that's liver hour." Oh, like then they start asking liver questions, and and so in my first gynecology class, I saw that every single piece of the menstrual cycle gave the most robust diagnostic information for free every single month. And I had this revelation that I was like, we've got it all wrong. We have been telling women that your period is a curse, that it's something to be ashamed of. This shit is like an instrument of unfair advantage because every single month you get a report card. You don't need an
Ah,
Apple Watch for this. Like, how many days of bleeding did you have? Oh, I had 1 day of bleeding. Well, your diet needs attention, right? You didn't have enough resources to even make a couple more days of blood. Oh, what happens if I never have a period? Well, let's look at blood. We can reverse engineer every single thing and then start pattern matching. Um, like for us, we don't ask how much water you drink. We ask how many days of cervical discharge you have. Because if you're hydrated and you're in the right age group, you're not too old, you will have abundant, stretchy cervical discharge. So then again, the treatment isn't a supplement, isn't whatever. It's like, well, the treatment is like, okay, let's first get you hydrated and then watch your cervical discharge. And I just thought that was a treasure trove of information that nobody knew about. And I'm like, I like to go fast. I like to be the first person. I was like, stake my claim on this. I was like, this is the most amazing. This is going to completely change women's health. And and about that same time, a new professor came to my college from China, like, and he was a very famous gynecologist, like a gynecologic acupuncturist. And because I was a linguist and because his English was, he was still really adapting and learning and no one could understand him, I became his translator. So, and protege. And I spent 4 years working with him. And he was so funny because he would totally, Dr. Ma, if you're listening to this, I know he won't. He would totally hide secrets from me. I would say, "Oh, this person has a very unique presentation." And he was like, "Yeah, just move the chi and blood." And I was like, "But what would you do?" And he's like, "You know how to do it." And I was like, "No, no, but what would you do?" And I was like, "Damn you, there's a secret in there. Tell me the family secrets." So he did gatekeep a little bit on me. And so then in school, I became obsessed with the menstrual cycle. I just felt like this is going to change the life of all women on the planet. And the more that I learned about reproductive medicine in the scope of Chinese medicine, the more convinced I have of that. And so I was like, I was the first board certified reproductive acupuncturist in North America. I had one of the first clinics that was exclusive for fertility and miscarriage. I was the first clinic to have an IVF center in my acupuncture center. I was not, of course, not doing the IVFs. We had a doctor collaboration that we had with that. But then, you're like, okay, but that was a long time ago. What about today? In 2016 or 17, I read a study that less than 3% of couples could afford fertility treatment. And to be very honest, I cried when I read that study. I cried because I think that in my heart of hearts, like we had a very high touch concierge experience that we provided for our patients. Most of the people who are coming to acupuncture were people who are more affluent, and we delivered an experience for that. But at the same time, I was like, I knew that there were a lot of people who needed our help who couldn't afford us. I just didn't know how to make it more affordable. It's just kind of like it's either there or it's not there. And so when I read that study, I just was like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to democratize access to all of women's health. I'm going to show that you can make everything that women need to have perfectly healthy bodies practically free and still build $1 billion company. And that's what I'm doing.
I'm so curious about this. Two questions. One, I want to go back a little bit before we continue with that. How does it work with women that are on the pill? Because I feel like that messes like a lot up. So how does it impact you and your work and what you studied, etc.?
So the women that I'm working with currently in Conceivable, that's our operating system for women's health that we're building. We're starting with infertility, but we are building 9 full experiences from age 9 until 90. It'll be the same back end experience, but the front end experience will be unique to those stages of life. And so as we're talking about, oral contraceptives, if somebody's trying to get pregnant, obviously they're not going to be taking birth control pills. So then that's not. But another question that is equally as important is women ask me every day, how bad is it that I was on birth control for 10 years? Or does birth control cause infertility? There are no published studies that show that birth control causes infertility. That doesn't mean that it doesn't, but we don't have any data, and I don't even have enough data to have a clinical opinion on it. How it hurts your fertility, it's not like the pills are hurting your fertility. We don't have data on that. But what I can say is that when you take, first, if we have the premise that the menstrual cycle is your report card, it
Hmm.
tells you every month how much your body likes or dislikes how you're taking care of it. And it's a direct feedback loop. But when we use oral contraceptives, the mechanism is to block ovulation. And really a period is just the down cascade from ovulation. It's the side effect of ovulation. So when you block ovulation and you're on birth control pills, what's the bleeding that happens? It's actually not a period. They give you progesterone that makes the lining get thicker. They take the progesterone and the lining comes out. So we miss at least 50 monthly signals that we can be paying attention to like, this person's not even for their fertility is not optimally healthy. So again, if we go back to like, suddenly this person becomes a vegan and 3 months later, she has a 1-day period. She's like, I don't know, my period's getting so scanty. I'm getting so scanty. Well, if we wouldn't see that if she was on birth control pills, it would just stay the same because it's just clinically, like chemically induced. But if we did, we could say, one, we might be like, that's very unusual to become suddenly anemic. Like without having hemorrhagic bleeding, did anything happen? Did you have a car accident? Whatever happened? Nothing happened. If that was my patient, I would send them to hematology because I would
Okay.
want to know what happened. Why did this person suddenly not have any blood? And we can kind of loosely measure their progesterone by their basal body temperatures. And those temperatures, when they get above 98 after ovulation and stay there, I do this every single time I say this. Was probably like the trillionth time, this little hand gesture. But if that person's temperatures were, say, 97 before ovulation and 97.2 after ovulation, we would see that she was anovulatory, not ovulating. And there's questions we need to ask that are really important for her long-term health. Like if you're not ovulating, one of the biggest causes is a condition called PCOS, which is like prediabetes related to your hormones, or like their weight has changed significantly in a way that's not healthy for their bodies. that they've gotten suddenly exposed to a lot more of those chemicals that we were talking about because they're very injurious to ovulation. So that's how I feel like taking birth control pills hurts our fertility because we lose all those years, and then you take off, the duct tape. I always say, taking birth control pills to regulate your period is like going in your car and just putting duct tape over all the check engine lights. And you're like, fuck it, I don't care. Nothing bad's going to happen. I'm just going to roll with it. That's what happens. And so then after 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, person says, I'm going to try and get pregnant. Like peel off all that old sticky. You're like, whoa, we got no blood. We got a 70-day cycle. They're not ovulating. There's no progesterone. It doesn't mean that the birth control caused those things.
But you
Those
don't have
things
the
that
signals
caused
to check. So basically, you don't know because all the signals you were basically hiding for a decade or longer, and now once you're like peeled everything off, you now have to double check. Like, hey, we have to establish a baseline and see, okay, this is this. Now we get every month a new information or a scorecard, and based on the scorecard, we can adjust diet. I guess also lifestyle, because I think it's diet, lifestyle. Um, what else are we?
mind, like
Yeah,
everything, like sleep, stress, eating, mind, and exercise, right? Because a lot of what I find is that either women are over exercising in a way that's injurious to their fertility or they're not exercising. And I always think that, the way to determine the right amount of exercise based on your health is to literally just ask yourself on a 1 to 10 with no caffeine or exercise for 2 whole days. On the third day, what's your energy like? And if your energy is not at 8, then you should be doing light exercise until it is at 8. Because otherwise, what happens is when we're tired and we work out, especially we work out hard, we go into, sympathetic mode and we start pumping out more adrenaline. Our body's like, I don't have the resources, so I have to use adrenaline to get through this workout. That's why tired people love exercise. They're like, oh, I'm dragging ass, but if I can just get to the gym, I'll feel better. Yeah, because you just open the fire hose of adrenaline and cortisol, which are feel good chemicals, but we've pushed ourselves back. Instead of improving our health, we're actually, and that's what happened to me over 15 years. Just train, train, train. I'm tired. I'll train more, but I would feel so much better after I would train, even if it was so long.
so basically, this level, because you said you have to basically after 2 or 3 days see whether you always have an energy level of 8 without caffeine, but that requires
Or
also
exercise.
or exercise, but you have to also have at least get your 7.5 or 8 hours of sleep, whatever time you need. Because I mean, if you only sleep 5 hours, it's like yeah,
Well, it
you will
depends.
not.
Obviously, there's genetic components on how much sleep you need, but yeah.
Yeah, but generalistic, like whatever once you go to sleep and you wake up naturally, and it's like okay, this should be enough, and then do the scaling.
A few questions. So basically, oh, okay, a statement and then a question. So the report card, what you're using with the not just for fertility in general, with the acupuncture and the system that you learned, works really well or works well, really well with everyone that is not on hormone replacement or pills or contraceptives. It does work also on when you get other, what is it called? That women can also get the spiral or whatever it's called and all that stuff. Or
PCOS. Oh, like with an IUD.
yeah, an IUD, it works. Or
If it's a non-hormonal, because you have two kinds of IUDs and one
Mhm.
is hormonal, that's going to give us
Okay.
misinformation. You can still use the system. It's just the feedback won't be as robust.
Okay, because you're missing some
Like,
of because you taped over some of the signs. Huh.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is fucking interesting. All right, let's go deeper then. Let's go deeper into the system because you already highlighted a few things. Explain us how the system works. What do you do exactly now?
So in an effort to figure out how to, make all of this affordable, I had to figure out how to remove myself. And in Chinese medicine, they say they have all these statements of fact, which as a linguist, I really like. The good doctor treats the patient. The great doctor treats society, but the master will learn how to make herself obsolete. So that's my mission, is to make myself obsolete. It's because I like to win. No, I'm just kidding about that.
I like
And
that.
so we spent the last because I've had help, a lot of help. We spent the last 8 years distilling exactly what I would do with a patient, what I would say, how I would answer. We built an algorithm and an app that's going to be out in 4 weeks, which is a digital twin of me. Her name is Kai, Kirsten AI, and she has a virtual care team that works with her. She has a therapist, a chef, nutritionist, data analyst, supplement formulator, and soon will be assistant, just general assistant, just because we want to help them to cope with the stress. We have a ring, which is similar to the Aura, but better because it's more accurate for temperature charting, and ours non-invasively measures glucose, which is, to me, the
Really?
pinnacle. Now, this isn't glucose monitoring. If you had diabetes, you wouldn't use this to calibrate your insulin. It's literally just a monitor. Is your blood sugar high, low, or normal? Because we interviewed 16,000 women last year and nobody knew. They just had no idea. So, for example, if she's wearing the Halo ring, that's our ring, and her blood sugar starts spiking over a few weeks, actually over 8 days, a message goes to her chef and says, hey, Lucas's blood sugar's been high this week. Can you up the protein, fiber, and fat? Let's see if that responds. And I'm also going to send a note to Saren, that's the therapist, to check on her because maybe something's really stressful going on. Let's see if we can work at the emotional level and the nutrition level. And then let's give her 2 weeks and see what happens.
That is so
And
cool.
so the team comes together, Kai interviews the user, and soon, maybe in 6 months, it's still very expensive. Soon it'll be AI video of me that interviews you, but currently that's like $1 a minute, so we can't afford that and keep it at $15, But she interviews you, she figures out all the underlying issues. Now, again, right now it's specifically for fertility, but she might be doing the exact same thing in the exact same way for endometriosis or PCOS or menopause or first period. And she figures out all the underlying issues. Then she matches them into 5 categories: energy, blood, hormones, temperature, and stress. These actually come from Chinese medicine: qi, blood, yin, yang. But we don't need that, right? We don't have to get into anything. We're borrowing these principles that allow us to do better pattern matching. And then you see that's scored. So for each of the categories, what's the max score? And then that produces her conceivable score. That score, if the score got above 70, it increased their likelihood of getting pregnant by 260% in 4 months or less with no human interaction.
Wow. What's the baseline? The baseline
What do you mean?
score? Because you said like if you go up
Oh,
to 70 score, you get it
oh
for
yeah,
200.
0 to 100.
But okay, so because you're saying if you're going up to 70 score, you're
Oh,
getting like 200 something, but that is based on the average being 50. The average
Oh,
person gets 50.
the average starting score for an infertile woman in our, using this in our pilot was 34.
Ah, okay. So basically, if you double there, it's also double in. Ah, nice. Does the system also
Yeah,
work for
and
men?
the thing
Because
is,
now, go ahead.
yeah, it doesn't work for men yet. As soon as I build out these 9, which is gonna, with some good funding, I can get it done in about 4 months. And then we'll go ahead. Once they figure out the underlying, like say this person is very tired. And upon a lot more investigation, she's tired because 1, she has a diet issue. Okay, the nutritionist takes over there. 2, she has a digestive issue, right? Kai is going to give her behavioral changes: eat slower, drink less water, eat more cooked foods. Then the therapist is going to talk to her about like, what can we do before we eat to calm our nervous system down so that we can have better blood sugar metabolism, and so on and so on. So each of those things come together, and then they build a plan, and then they watch and they make sure what she's doing. And at any time, we have hundreds and hundreds of trackers: Apple, Aura, Ava, Mira, Nado, Human, Ultra Human. They do one thing and one thing only: they track. And there isn't a drop of data that shows that tracking changes anything. Tracking does
Yeah.
not change outcomes. What changes outcomes is understanding what that track data means in concert with all the other data, and then being able to make it actionable to change the outcome. And
So
that's what we do at Conceivable.
that's why you also have. So you have the Halo ring, right? You call it
Yep.
Halo. Am I correct?
Mhm.
So two things, because we're also business podcast. So first of all, like how will it work? Because we will launch in 4 weeks the app. Is it subscription based? What is the ring an extra, or how would all of this be structured? Because, like for example, yeah, what if I have an Apple Watch which I normally use as a woman, but can you also pull the data from that, or is it not as accurate? So the user will need to get the Halo ring.
We'll pull data for the first integration is just Apple, because everybody else's gets pulled by Apple typically. And so if they want to use their Apple Watch, or if they want it, they say, oh, I want to use my Whoop, we'll just say connect it to your Apple, and then we can pull it from the Apple. We will, they'll get a pop-up that will say, hey, just FYI, we have not found, whatever you're using, if it's true to be as accurate as ours is. Just know that just take it with a grain of salt. That, and also, an easy way to check is to just check your temperature. Just see what the device is telling you your temperature is, and take an oral temperature first thing when you wake up in the morning. It will be different because a mouth temperature is different than a skin temperature, but the delta should be the same. So if it's 0.2 of a point, it should be consistently 0.2 of a point different. And we couldn't match that to any other device.
Are you guys currently focusing only on the US, or are you also going to Europe? What is the go to market?
So we can currently own, so the other thing that we have are supplements. So as part of, like, everything needs to be personalized here. And so what I saw was that women were taking baskets of the shittiest, lowest quality supplements on the planet. And we had a line of clinical grade supplements that I was really proud of. Think like Metagenics, Thorne, same manufacturing, standards.
Raisin or what was it called?
What's that?
What was it called? The supplement raisin? No,
Oh, brazen. Those were Chinese. That's Chinese herbal medicine for periods. This was just like all the individual supplements that I might recommend if somebody's trying to get pregnant. They have specific challenges, like if they don't have cervical discharge and they're hydrated, we need things like L-arginine, vitamin E, stuff like that. But it was really expensive, and because our whole ethos is how do we make all of this affordable for every person on the planet, we just searched high and low and finally found a manufacturer who actually worked to deal with us to be able to create daily individual personalized packs for $109 a month. Now, we only take a 10% margin. We don't take much margin at all on it. The reason for that is I trust that with enough users, we can still have a very profitable company. By building the trust, it's like, we are here to build you the highest quality stuff. We're going to take a small margin, but we expect you to do your part too and really help us to promote and grow the business organically, because that's the fastest way to scale anyways.
That's awesome. I like that. I like the attitude. It reminds me a lot of momentous supplements in terms of quality. They're famed to, like, their claim to fame is like, hey, we got it all tested. Obviously, their margins are a lot higher, but it's super super interesting. I like that. I like that. I like
my
that.
question is, you're talking about their personalized vitamins and also like with the supplements, and that's also one of the problems. Like when I go on Amazon and
Oh,
like I try to look for supplements, man, I just get bombarded with 10,000 different brands. I don't know who to trust. Like then there are different kind of quality. Everybody's like saying high quality stuff, and then there are certain standards that you have, and it's just like very very confusing. So I definitely get that when you say like most of them they're taking low quality stuff. It's like because like even if you want to, you know, the only indicator you can use is price, but this is also not technically a
yeah.
good indicator. So it's like I definitely get that pain because like you want to take something, especially when you're like infertile, right? You want to use the right pills. You heard a podcast that I don't know, vitamin D helps or omega 3.
Geritol is what they take. Do you
So
know
is
what that
it?
is?
No, please explain.
Maybe you don't even have it in Europe, but Geritol is like the daily vitamin your grandma used to take. And it has
Ah.
a ton, it's really cheap. It's like $12 a bottle, but it has a lot of
One
really
a
crappy
day?
iron in it.
Is that the one a
Huh?
day? Are they called one a
It's
day?
not a whole bit. The name of it is
Oh,
called Geritol.
oh, okay.
Ah.
But like a few people got pregnant while taking Geritol, and then this whole thing took off where they were saying Geritol, Geritol, it's a baby in a bottle, it's a baby in a bottle. And I get on there every day. I'm like, Geritol is not a baby in a bottle, and actually, it's going to hurt you, because if you're taking a good prenatal that already has the RDA for iron, and then you take another supplement that has a big dose of bad iron in it, you are going to be overdosing on iron. And that's really one of the reasons why I wanted to personalize the packs, because so often not only were they taking crappy supplements, they were taking supplements that could hurt them, like taking extra iron when you're trying to get pregnant. Or a lot of women take this kind of myoinositol called ovasitol. It's really good if you have high testosterone, but only 2% of the population have high testosterone. And if you take
As
something for
women
high
or men,
testosterone,
both.
huh?
Who have 2% of women population have only higher testosterone or
Yeah,
male?
only 2% of
Yeah.
females have,
Okay.
according to female margins, not
Okay.
like not compared to men, but having excess testosterone that would impact their fertility, only 2%. But 90% of the women who are taking myoinositol are taking this form with the dichiro in it, hurting their fertility, because when you lower your you need testosterone. We need a little testosterone in the embryo to fuel. It basically fuels sort of the mitochondrial activity.
I have Okay. First of all, do you have anything for women have sometimes what if they have what is it? It's a disease where they have on their where they have the egg production, it's all they have cysts and all that stuff. What's called
Hmm.
P something?
PCOS.
PCOS. How do you guys manage this? What's
This
the
is
go-to
so
there?
good. So even if someone's listening and they have PCOS, you can still use the Conceivable app. If you can just put up with the fertility talk for just a little bit, it'll just be in the context of fertility because that's the experience there. So PCOS, just for the listeners, is called polycystic ovarian syndrome. So you are right there. What happens is it's a metabolic disorder that makes you sort of very susceptible to insulin resistance and pretty severe hormone dysregulation and excess testosterone. And we women with PCOS there's a skinny type and a overweight type. The skinny type are very lean and sort of really wiry and a little bit like really type A. And the women who have a hard time losing weight, they are more puffy. Like even like everybody's, if you've ever been overweight before, some people's like fat on their body is more firm, but people with PCOS, they have a lot of water. So the fat that's on their body is actually a little bit squishy. And they get a lot of uh, digestive symptoms, fatigue. They can have thyroid issues, high risk for miscarriage. But the good news is just like prediabetes is completely treatable, so is PCOS. Unfortunately, our doctors are very quick to say, here, just take metformin, which helps to stabilize blood sugar. But it really isn't I mean, you can use supplements. I prefer to use myo-inositol and chromium and also figure out like, well, what are the underlying issues? Is she sleeping enough? What's her stress level like? There's a whole bunch of other factors to address. What's her inflammation? What's her environment like? But diet and stress management and good supplementation, in 90 days, people can have a profound change in their PCOS presentation. And in 6 months, it can be even more impressive. Take some time, but it's important because having that condition, I'm not like a fear factor person, but I feel like we need awareness that having PCOS does put us at much higher risk for diabetes, heart disease, estrogen dependent cancers, and stroke. And we don't want that for women. And so we need to do a better job in our medical system when we diagnose one with this by really educating, like, it's important to not wait until you try to get pregnant to get this managed. This is something you're going to manage for the rest of your life. It doesn't have to be hard. There's a lot of ways once you get your blood sugar kind of under control, it's not as hard as it seems.
Okay, that was a kind of a selfish question because my girlfriend has it, so I wanted to know. Also, quick question: does it also impact your hair, or does it not impact hair at all? Hair loss, or
Yes. It can be very common in PCOS. So if we think again back to like we always want to ask why. Why would that be? Why would someone who has a blood sugar issue, it's not always a blood sugar issue, but like a metabolic disorder, also have hair loss? And from my point of view, it'd be like, well, blood, like your hair is a reflection of your blood in Chinese medicine. So say all of a sudden your hair starts getting thin or it gets really dull, most people would be like, "Oh, your hair is like, are you okay? You don't look good. Like your hair's not very vibrant. Your nails don't grow so much." And so what happens with PCOS because their digestion and metabolism are so impaired and they're getting a lot of sugar in their blood but not as much nutrients as like the hair starts to show that. So it gets harder and harder to make enough blood to support the production of healthy, happy hair. So my guess is that when women, not my guess, but when women have more hair loss symptoms associated with PCOS, you'll also see them either having a history of very heavy bleeding, which depleted the blood, or conversely, very scanty bleeding, meaning either we need to work on diet or digestion or exercise because a lot of things that happen with PCOS is that it's really hard for those women who gain weight easily to lose weight. They can work out 3 times a day and eat 1,000 calories and not lose weight. And the trick is actually to eat more and exercise less. It's very counterintuitive. Their bodies are very sensitive to stress. And so exercising hard just puts their bodies in a stress state in which they hold on to it. And so does fasting or, you know, reducing your calories. You can't eat 2,000 or 3,000 calories, but we need enough and we need calories that are primarily protein, fiber, and fat.
I
well,
mean, for me, I'm like 2,000, 3,000 calories. That's something I can eat. I'm like, that's like,
like we're at 3,000 almost. I'm like, yep.
I'm like, if I eat below, that's a little bit too little. My question though,
Oh
what
man,
will
I'm
be
57. Mine is 1,500 a day. It is so sad.
oof,
But do you
1,500?
get? Are you
1,500
still hungry? Are you still hungry after? Because I always imagine
on
that.
it.
You don't need that much.
Yeah, well, I'm not anymore, so I just recently got diagnosed with this condition. I was having severe exercise intolerance, and it was like, even if I walked around the grocery store, I would bonk, as if I had, like, not eaten and, overtrained, and it turned out that somehow I am missing the enzyme that turns, carbohydrates into ATP, into energy.
Oh,
So
Oh,
when I eat carbohydrates, I make lactic acid, and so what was happening is what I thought was a bonk was I was going into lactic acidosis every day, like, for 7 or 8 years, and I
how
was
did you
just like, I would be
solve that?
s you're not gonna believe this. I went to every doctor, and they're like, "Oh, it's your MS," just kept saying, "Well, you have all these autoimmune dis." um, I put everything into Claude. I put every
it's so
test,
good.
every single thing. And and the thing that I kept saying to my doctors too is I kept saying, "I feel like I get poisoned every time I eat or exercise." And by exercising, meaning, like, take my dog around the block to pee, like, very little, walk around the grocery store for 5 minutes. And, and I would say even when I get to the grocery store after 5 minutes of walking, my vision changes. And what Claude
That's
told me was,
amazing.
like, the retinas are some of the most, and the embryos are some of the most mitochondrial rich tissues in the body. And because your mitochondria are so compromised of never getting nourished for so, 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 so long, like, it can't get any fuel to the retina. That's why any little demand on energy is sucking it dry. So to answer your question, now the only treatment for this is very easy. I just don't eat carbs. I only eat keto, like less than 20 carbs a day. And I can't eat enough anymore. Like, I can't get to 1,600 calories. I'm like, ugh,
Yeah, that's hard.
yeah.
It's really
how
hard.
many more avocados do I have to eat today, you know?
How
Yeah.
many steaks do I have to eat more? Oh no, I live in Texas. Another barbecue?
Well, you
I know,
can't have
it's like I have
barbecue
to go to
sauce.
Costco. Well, the
Sugar
barbecue sauce
levels.
has carbs in it, that's the bad
Yeah,
part.
yeah. Well, they're sugar-free ones. At least
Yes,
here we
but they're
have
not
them.
good.
Honestly, we have
But, I
some
mean,
good ones here.
if it weren't for allulose, I'd be dead.
I
Uh,
wanna come back to the PCOS. I have one more question. Does it
Sure.
also impact your energy levels?
Yes. Can you guess why?
Well, it's like I'm guessing it's like diabetes, the sugar, and you're not digesting well. You are well, your hormones are off. I'm guessing it also impacts somehow sleep,
Yeah.
and that's why.
Well, yeah, because those things are all connected, and so you're absolutely on track. So the only reason I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but this way we have to kind of practice challenging, like, but if I had to guess, like, that's all you have to do is, like, if I had to guess what could be related. So first, obviously, quality of food. So she needs high protein, fiber, and fat. So that, but then how well does she digest? So you ask her, do you have gas, bloating, fatigue after meals, sugar cravings? If that's out, even if the diet's perfect, she's not going to break her food down efficiently. She's not going to get nutrients efficiently out of it. It does affect sleep because when we have too much sugar in our blood, that ups those blood sugar spikes and lows are very hard on our adrenal glands, which then produces too much cortisol, which makes it harder to fall asleep. But then if we're not sleeping quality, we don't regulate the hormones ghrelin and leptin while we sleep. They regulate sleep. I mean, excuse me, satiety,
appetite.
feeling full, and appetite. So the full one is important too because a lot of women with PCOS, they're like, I can eat so much, I never get full. It's because sleep
Yeah.
hasn't been regulated. So
Okay.
you're absolutely right. And so then the downscale for her, if I'm guessing, if we're just making stuff about her, but it's like if she has like some hair loss issues too, and she has scanty bleeding, that's from that whole cascade as well. So you want to just start working on each piece of that. And as each piece just improves 5 or 10%, it starts feeding the second piece even better, which now feeds the next piece by 20%. And you start getting a virtuous cycle.
This is awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. Happy to talk to your girlfriend too.
I'm sure she will appreciate that.
I I have a question. So, are we being misled along how long we should wait? Where, like, for example, how to treat infertility. So, for example, because people always just say, "Ah, yeah," I'm just like, because people don't really pay attention till they actually want to have kids.
Hmm.
Like, how early should how to our listeners? How early should they really care? Is it something like, I will, later. I don't do it right now.
So That is such a good question, and it's such a softball for me because it's something that's important to have a conversation. So people are like, well, exactly that. Like, how, like, what's the latest I can wait to do all this? I encourage you to do it now, even if you're 17 years old or 12 years old, because the reality is your menstrual cycle is your feedback on your health. And so whether you want to get pregnant or not get pregnant, if you've got a 60-day cycle, if you're having 60 days between periods, your body is going, hey, girl, I need some help. This is not working for me. And the longer that that goes on, the injure, a lot of times that's related to blood sugar related issues. That blood sugar is so harmful, that elevation to every cell, tissue, organ in our body, to our eyes, to our brains, to our bones. And so once we see those signals, now is the time to approach them. Now, plenty of people are like, I don't care. That's fine. But that's just my answer. Like, people have to just determine what's most important to them right now and in the future. If they're using the Conceivable app, they will have their Conceivable score. Conceivable not only meaning fertility, like we talk about conceivable meaning possibility, like a life without PMS and cramping, that's conceivable, right? Access to fertility care that every person can afford, that's conceivable. Where women became the shepherds and mentors of other women, where we own our whole relationship with our bodies, that's conceivable. And so when we talk about that, the conceivable score is basically your health potential. And you want to be working to get that above 70. When you're at 70, you're not perfect. People can get to 90, but you'd have to work really hard for that. If you're at 60, you are like doing so great. You're probably doing the 80-20, where 80% of the time your diet's really good. 80% of the time you're moving in a way that's consistent with what your body needs. 20%, you're not. You're doing more, you're doing less, you're fuck it, I don't care. But your body is basically chugging along, and you have wiggle room to get COVID, to have something and be resilient towards that.
Kirsten, I know this is completely different to what you just said, but why should men get their sperm tested?
Oh, my favorite. I love that. Okay, so men never want to get their sperm tested, and there's reasons for that, right? You got to go to the doctor and you have to like produce a sample. I don't know what the age group is for this, so I'll try and keep it clean. But recent research, there's a very smart urologist in LA, Paul Turek. So if you have any problems with sperm or male factor, this is your guy. He's a brilliant, he invented an artificial testicle, and he's about as charismatic as Jesus. I mean, smart and a lovable human. But they did a huge study, and they found that abnormal semen parameters, which means the sperm count, the swimmers, I'm just using the lay terms because some people might not know, the morphology, which is like the DNA, if any of those parameters are out of whack or lower than we would expect them, and the bar is low, lowest fifth centile. So if 100 men got somebody pregnant, what was the worst 5%? That's what we consider normal. So if you're on the low normal, I consider that low. But anyways, so Turek's work found that that poor semen parameters was highly predictive of earlier onset prostate cancer, more severe prostate cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. It doesn't mean that sperm caused those things, right? This is not people are like, well, that's not possible. Just like the menstrual cycle is the canary in the coal mine for women's health, the semen analysis is for men. And
Just a
while
little
it's a
harder.
hassle and it's harder, but and I'm not affiliated with these people, although I probably sent them $1 billion in business. There's one at-home semen analysis called Legacy. You have to search Legacy sperm test because there's like a million companies with the name Legacy. So type in Legacy sperm test and then they will come up. They have the most comprehensive home test. They have some that just measure count, or they don't measure everything, which is not as useful. Just go ahead and do it, and then you can produce your sample at home with your partner or wife and send it back in and get a baseline and see where you're at. And the fixes are often easy. Like if the motility is low, motility is how active are the sperm, right? Do they swim fast? Because they need to get to the egg in a certain amount of time. But motility is a big problem. And you know what else? Men with motility problems almost always are exhausted. So exhausted men will make exhausted sperm. So we figure out, why are they so tired? Are they overworking? Are they working 2 jobs? Are they not eating well enough? Do they have digestive symptoms? Blah, blah, blah. And then you start addressing that, and the motility comes up in 3 or 4 months. I mean, that's just how long it takes to restore it. Supplements can make a huge difference there as well.
I
Does
love you
do
holistic.
exhausted sperm or tired sperm make uglier babies or dumber kids? Does that
Fail
have
to
impact?
fertilize.
Okay,
Well, it
okay.
could be fail to fertilize. They're not good. The moment of conception is probably one of the best predictors of the health of the parents at the moment of conception is probably one of the best predictors of the health of the offspring. Like I was I was like so many health problems. I'm the baby of 5. I'm 11 years past the last one. So my mom was old when she had me. I was a surprise baby. And my mom, I know, drank and smoked a lot while she was pregnant with me. And in acupuncture school, they talk about Saturday night babies. So when there's a child who isn't really thriving and like mild developmental, they wouldn't say this, they had like something serious, but they're just like, you know, just not thriving in the way that they would, they'll say, "Oh, maybe that was a Saturday night baby," which means the mom and dad partied and then they had sex and then they got pregnant. So I asked my mom, I said, "Hey, mama, was I a Saturday night baby?" She's, "What's that mean?" And I explained it. She goes, "Oh, no, you weren't conceived on Saturday night. You were conceived on New Year's Eve." And I was like, "That explains everything. Thank you very much." So
You're like, "Not better, mom, not better."
I was
Much
like,
worse.
as if the rest of the drinking and smoking, didn't really help with that. I did turn out
Oh.
very resilient. That's one thing for sure. But, I was born with no tonsils. I mean, really, I'm an alien. I was born with no tonsils. I have extra lumbar vertebra. My DNA, 23andMe told me 3 times my DNA was unreadable. One other recent one, I can't use carbohydrates for fuel.
You ran out of luck somewhere.
But
I
it
know, or I'm an advanced species.
exa
I like that.
exactly. But it also but for me, that already shows like the personal motivation because that's why it comes back to the beginning where I was like, how do you get into it and why you're so motivated about it? Because now that we see like the entire thing, like your person, like you can't for example, you can't use carbs as fuel. Your MS, all these things like form that you had to look at your body and everything in a holistic point of view, which now makes like conceivable like so interesting because normally people only look from one. It's like a horse, right? They always just like look like this at certain problems. But you're saying, okay, we're looking on all these things because they have an impact, because you have seen from your past experience and your own like your own life that like, okay, you can't just look at one angle. All of them have a
Mhm.
big role on it. And I really, really like this. Because like I've never seen something like so holistic, which is like super, super cool.
We talked a lot about
Well,
well,
thank you.
you mentioned diabetes before, and this makes me think of, Alzheimer's, because I heard before that Alzheimer's might be diabetes type 3, and it's also
Mhm.
something that hits close to home because our, grandma or her sister, they had it. So I'm asking, have you treated it? How's your look onto this?
So, I treated plenty of people with diabetes in my clinic who were also trying to get pregnant. Not that diabetes isn't my specialty, but again, if we reverse engineer it in the same way, the process is exactly the same. You interview the person, you identify all the subclinical factors from their energy, from digestion, from their sleep, from their exercise. There's all of those subclinical factors and whatever labs that they may or may not have. And then you start treating the foundation. And when you fix the foundation, all of those chronic illnesses fix themselves. I don't have any experience treating Alzheimer's, but I will say that there are some very interesting studies with smell and diabetes. I mean, no, excuse me, with Alzheimer's, that they were using like very simple essential oils, like ones that most people have: lemon, lavender, rosemary. I can't remember the other ones, mint. And they were rotating them and putting them in the room just as a atomizers, whatever you call it, for 4 weeks at a time. And they had like 20% improvement in cognition just from doing that one thing. And somebody was telling me it's because scent and the pineal gland are highly connected, which is connected to memory. But I'm probably botching the science on it. This is not my domain area of
That's
expertise,
cool. That's
but
really cool.
interesting. These are the things that I'm interested in. What are the things that move the needle that are free, like biofeedback? I think, we're going to be building biofeedback into the app because we're already building this cool face scan technology so that we can see HRV and VO2 max and body composition and voice sentiment analysis. So that if we ask her, how are you doing? She's like, I'm fine, because that's all girls can say is I'm fine. Because if you're mad, if you're mad, you're a bitch. And if you're sad, you're a baby. So everyone's like, I'm fine. Everything's good. Right. But we want to trick them and use sentiment analysis, not really trick them. That seems wrong because I'm a nice person.
Oh, that
But
seems right.
so that if they're like, I'm fine, then Kai can say, but you know what? When I'm listening to your voice, you don't sound fine. Can we just talk a little bit more?
I like it.
I don't want you to do this on your own. You don't have to be with these feelings on your own. You don't have to suffer by yourself. I'm here with you 24/7.
I like that a lot. I might need that for my girlfriend to understand her when she's fine. I'm like, here, talk to Kai.
You'll probably get a kick in the teeth for that, but what will be
100%
better,
I would say.
I'll be hiding in the corner just like filming it, you know? But
that would be so funny. If y'all did that for fun, just for funsies, send me a clip of that. I'll pay you $1 million.
on it.
I can tell y'all like trouble. I can tell we would get in a lot of trouble together.
100%. Kirsten, where can people find you?
So the fastest, easiest way is just to go to conceivable.com. You can't forget that. It's so easy. But you can find me on the TikTok, Your Fertility Expert. I have another one too, The Period Expert. But where I'm most active currently is Your Fertility Expert.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you, Kirsten. I really appreciate it.